All right, so you've made it through my introductory video. Let's actually jump into our very first module, Cybersecurity Foundations for the Real World. What is our goal with this course? The goal is to talk about core principles of cybersecurity, all right? But more importantly, we not only want to learn about the principles of cybersecurity, what cybersecurity is, everything that makes up cybersecurity. We want to learn how to think like a cybersecurity professional. That is my goal for you throughout this entire course. I stated it in the introductory video, but every slide is going to have a question at the end of it. And I want you to pause the video and think about the answer to that question. All right. The goal is to learn how to critically think. That is what's going to set you apart. That is what's going to ensure your success in the long run. All right. Learning how to think, how to critically think about cybersecurity, what makes up cybersecurity, and what it really takes to protect environments, systems, and data. All right. So, again, thank you. Now, let's jump into the course. You might see me doing cuts. That's if I stumble on words, I mess up, or I find myself rambling. I'm going to be cutting that stuff out because I don't want to waste your time. Module 1, Understanding IT Systems. I told you that before we jump into actual cybersecurity topics and acronyms and terminology and different solutions, we have to understand what we are protecting. Okay, you cannot protect what you don't understand. That's why the very first module of this course is understanding IT systems. What is IT? What makes up IT systems? What does it mean? All right, what are we actually doing here? Obviously, in this day and age, in 2026, every single business out there leverages technology. All right, that's why cybersecurity exists, because every business uses tech. All right, so before we jump in, we have to understand what those businesses are using, what the landscape looks like. And that's why we're going to be talking about an overview of how technology powers modern organizations. All right. Understanding IT systems is crucial for cybersecurity. So in module 1, we're going to talk about understanding IT fundamentals. All right. Comprehending what do we mean by systems? All right. What do we mean by networks? What does that mean? What is data? All right. We all probably have a decent grasp of data, but data is really the focal point of everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. We're going to talk about how organizations rely on technology and why cybersecurity plays such a massive role in technology. All right. What are we doing for the world? All right. This is why I say that we need to change the way we're thinking about tech and why we're thinking about cybersecurity in certain aspects. You're going to realize that cybersecurity is more than what you just imagined, all right, than what you've been imagining. We're going to talk about the role of cybersecurity in the grand scheme of things, right? Why am I in cybersecurity? Why are you trying to get into cybersecurity? What is the purpose of cybersecurity? What are the actual problems that exist, the problems that we need to address? All right. And we're at the very start of the course, and I just want to quickly talk about impacts of when cybersecurity is either overlooked or attackers get past protections and what that really means in the real world. All right. The territory of thinking like a cybersecurity professional means understanding the real world ramifications of when cybersecurity fails. All right. And I want you to understand that you can have the best protections, but there's an age-old saying that it's not a matter of if you'll be attacked or breached or hacked. It's a matter of when. What is information technology? When we say IT, what do we actually mean? Well, IT is everything that we use to process data. Okay. It's everything that plays a role in our day-to-day lives that does something with data. We talk about systems. All right. There's 3 categories that everything can pretty much fall into when we talk about the world of information technology: systems, networks, and data. All right. When we talk about systems, we're talking about computers. All right. Everyone at this point has a decent grasp or a solid grasp of computers, right? Your laptops, your desktops. When you go to work, you're working on a laptop or you're working on a company computer. All right. Servers. You might not have a grasp on what we mean by servers, but when we say servers, these are computers. All right. Servers are computers. They're systems that literally their purpose is to serve something to the rest of the environment. All right. Let's say you are working in a doctor's office and there's 10, 15 workers, everybody's on their own computer, but you have a need to share documents between each other. All right. You have a need to share documents amongst each other. Are you going to email each other all those documents? No. Are you going to print them out and send them to each other? No. You are likely going to be leveraging a central file repository that when you drag a file into that folder, everybody in the office can then access it and pull it onto their computer. They edit it, they put it back, all that stuff. That is what we call a file server in that case. That's a specific type of server, all right? Any computer can be a server. The servers is the role that it plays in the environment, all right? And in modern day, servers are extremely powerful, right? The hardware that they're running on is super beefy because they are serving many people, many computers, many different reasons why they exist. So servers are extremely critical in the everyday landscape, all right? Mobile devices. Obviously, we all use our iPhones, our Androids, our Google phones, all right? Mobile devices they fall in the information technology category. We're running software on them, right? We have all these apps, the social media, our life lives on our mobile devices, all right? So imagine the sheer amount of data that's sitting on our devices, the amount of data we send to the social media platforms, right? We're on phone calls, we're talking to people, we're sending text messages, we're sending photos, they're processing data. And then the applications, right? I already mentioned this. This is the software that we use on a daily basis, all the different types of apps that we use, the Microsoft 365, the Google Drives, the Microsoft OneDrives, all these different type of applications that they also fall into the category of systems and information technology. Then the part that the everyday person doesn't really think too much about, but again, in this course, we are here to change that, right? I'm changing the way you think about technology, right? Networks. The only way we're able to communicate with each other, the only way you are watching this and taking this course is because of networks. Networks allow systems to communicate with each other, right? Without networks, nothing matters. If there were no networks, if networking didn't exist, social media would mean nothing, right? We go on social media to watch content, to talk to each other. But if systems were not able to communicate with each other, social media would cease to function. All right, you wouldn't be able to browse the internet. You wouldn't be able to go to your favorite sites. You wouldn't be able to go to YouTube and watch videos. You wouldn't be able to stream Netflix, right? Watch all these streaming platforms. Without networking, none of that is possible. And so what actually enables that? There is entire infrastructure that enables networking. Okay, you have different networking devices that take the data from our computers or our mobile phones and sends that data to where it needs to get to, and then also come back to you in order to make everything work. All right. Networking allows our systems to communicate and exchange data. And then we have the actual data. All right. The actual information, the whole reason why we use computers, we use our phones. This is everything, right? Data, the videos that we're watching, our medical records you have at the doctor's office, right? Your academic records at school. This is all data, all right? This is the actual information that all these systems are processing, the data that's moving through the networks. All right. Data is extremely critical. It is at the focal point of everything because organizations store that data, they analyze it, and they rely on it. Right. We as consumers rely on data. Everything is data. And so the reason why we are level setting and talking about information technology is because IT is a combination of systems, networks, and data. The world of IT, what actually enables the real world to function, is so complex. And the role of cybersecurity is to not only make sure that these systems are safe, right? The whole thing about cybersecurity, you're protecting data, right? Where it's not just about keeping data safe. Cybersecurity, believe it or not, is also about making sure that these systems don't fail, right? And we're going to touch on that when we in later in this module, but that's why we're talking about this, right? You have to understand what the world looks like in order to really understand the role of cybersecurity. Now, like I said, every slide is going to have a question. I'm going to pose a question to you at the end of every slide, because as we progress through these modules, progress through this course, I'm going to be slowly molding the way you think. I need you to, if you want to be in cybersecurity, if you want to succeed in the cybersecurity world, I need you to think about what it actually means to protect these systems. All right. That's the way cybersecurity professionals think. The first question is, if an attacker wanted to disrupt a company, which of these three components would be the easiest target? Pause the video and think about it. Out of systems, networks, and data, what is the easiest target? It's kind of a trick question because it all depends, right? That is our job, is to make sure that it is not easy to disrupt or attack any of these, right? The computers that we're using. If you're working at a company and somebody's able to just walk in and steal all the computers, that would make the systems easy targets, right? Our job is to make sure that that is not possible. If you are on your mobile phone or you're on your email and you click on really suspicious looking emails and you get hacked and your system gets breached and the company gets breached and data gets stolen, then that might have been really easy for the attacker, right? They're able to trick you. That would make the data and your systems an easy target. It's a little bit harder to break into networks, but again, if the networks are not configured securely, they would become easy targets. All right. So that is the job of cybersecurity, is to make sure that we are protecting systems, protecting networks, and at the end of the day, protecting the data so that nothing is an easy target. Our job is to make sure that the lives of these attackers is difficult, right? So let's talk about systems. What do we mean by systems? We have our endpoints. Okay. This is a very important, remember, I said I need you to lock in and hone in on everything that we talk about. Nothing that I talk about in this course is for fluff. Okay. Everything is extremely critical in ensuring your success in cybersecurity and in IT. All right. This term gets thrown around all the time. This is daily language. Endpoints. Endpoints are the systems that users are using on a daily basis. This is the stuff that we use to do our jobs, our laptops, right? You're using your laptop every day at work. You're using your computer every day at work. That is considered an endpoint. All right. Your mobile phones, right? The mobile phone, your iPhone that you use to check your email, your iPhone is considered an endpoint. It is for daily tasks. Then we have servers. All right. We talked about the servers. The servers are it's right here, dedicated to hosting essential applications, databases, and services. All right. When we say hosting applications, let's say you are at work and let's say you're at the end of your workday and you need to enter your time, right? You just worked a 10-hour shift. You want to make sure you get paid for those 10 hours. All right. When you connect to that timekeeping application, that application is living on a server. Okay. The server, that computer, that system is serving the timekeeping application to everybody at your company. When we talk about databases, right? These servers hold massive amounts of important data. When you have applications, the applications need to pull data from databases. So you have servers talking to other servers. And then services, this service is a very broad category. It could be the timekeeping application could be a service. You could have scanning software running in the environment, right? That's a service. Service is a very broad category, but if it is something that everybody in the company is using, or a lot of people are using, a lot of systems are using, it is living on a server. And then you have applications, right? The timekeeping software, your email software, right? Your CRM, the customer relationship management software. All right. You every day you come into work and you need to manage all your customers. You want to look at how many customers you have, their emails, did they pay you on time, all of that stuff, right? This stuff is living in applications. That is a part of systems. And then the infrastructure. When we say infrastructure, again, this is another type of broad category, but infrastructure, as we dive deeper into this course, you'll get a better understanding of what we mean by infrastructure. Because can servers be infrastructure? Yes, 100%. If the servers are there providing critical services to the entire company, they are considered a part of your infrastructure. But infrastructure goes even beyond that, right? There's this term called virtualization, where you have computers living inside of other computers, right? You can have a multitude of servers existing on one physical computer. That would be considered your infrastructure. The cloud environment that you're using, right? The Microsoft 365 is a SaaS application. It's a cloud application. That is also considered a part of your infrastructure if you heavily rely on it. Storage, right? All this data has to live somewhere. The payroll application, some custom application that your company uses, if you have custom email, anything, right? The CRM, that data has to live on servers. In all cases, you have servers that are dedicated to storing data. Okay, that's what we mean by storage infrastructure. So why am I talking about all this? Because cybersecurity exists to protect all of this. If you get your laptop stolen, what happens if you had important data sitting on your laptop, right? For whatever reason, if you had all your family pictures on your laptop, right? Not backed up in the cloud or anything, but they're just sitting on your laptop. If someone steals your laptop, you not only lost all those family pictures, but now somebody else has them, right? Who knows what they could do with that? If you lost your phone, that's a big problem, right? What if your phone didn't have a password protection on it, or if you didn't have Face ID on your phone? Now somebody has access to your entire life. We exist to protect endpoints. What happens if your laptop gets hacked and somebody steals all the data off your laptop? What if somebody hacks your computer and does something so malicious that you can no longer use your computer and now you can't work? You have to feed your family, but that depends on you working. So what happens if the laptop that you're using is no longer usable? Servers. You just worked a 10, 12-hour shift. You want to be able to punch in your time and make sure that you get paid for that time. But what happens if some attacker hacked the network, got to the timekeeping application, and took down that entire server? And now you can no longer enter your time, right? Now you multiply that by 50,000 employees at your company and no one can enter time. Very quickly escalates to real big problems. So we need to make sure we're protecting our servers, right? Protecting your applications, the timekeeping software. If you work at a doctor's office, let's take it a step further. If you work at a hospital, okay, and the hospital is relying on the computers that the doctors walk around with, right? They need to be able to chart and take information down on their patients, right? They need to be able to pull up prescriptions. They need to pull up your medical history. If that stuff becomes unavailable, that's a real problem, right? What happens if somebody attacks a hospital and steals all the data? That becomes a very big problem. All right. So the applications, the medical software that doctors use at hospitals, that stuff needs to be available at all times. That's why we're talking about this. We need to be able to protect these IT systems, okay? And you cannot protect them if you don't understand their role that they play in everyday life, okay? Which of these systems would likely contain the most sensitive information in an organization? Pause the video and think about it. What would most likely contain the most sensitive information? It could be your storage infrastructure. It could be your databases where all that medical history is sitting. It could be in the application itself, okay? If the application self-hosts a database, then that would mean that the application hosts all the sensitive information. What happens if your doctor is keeping all of your medical history on the laptop and it's not backed up anywhere? Well, then that quickly becomes a point where all the sensitive information is, okay? So again, this is the stuff that you have to think about it this way. Nothing is black and white in cybersecurity. Nothing is black and white in IT. Okay, this is where the critical thinking comes in. If I asked you where the most sensitive information in an organization would be, again, the answer would be, it depends. It could be everywhere. It could be on all of these systems at the same time. Okay, you don't want to neglect any of these. If you neglect one system and that becomes a vulnerable point in your environment, then somebody could use that to pivot to the rest of your place. Okay, that becomes an entry point for that attacker. Now, we talked about systems, but let's talk about networks. Okay, this is why I do encourage people to have some experience in IT before jumping into cybersecurity, because again, you have to understand what makes up the world, what makes up the IT world. But my job today is to do my best to guide you through this and give you the fundamentals so you can continue your journey in cybersecurity. So when we talk about networks, what does that mean, right? Networks connect systems. That's what networking is all about, is connecting systems. Information has to be able to flow from one system to the other, okay? And the reason that seamless is used here is because the information, sure, you can have two systems communicating with each other, but what happens when it takes 5 hours for some kind of email or package or some kind of data to get sent from system A to system B? And you have to spend 5 hours each time talking between systems. No, that's terrible. Okay, that's why we emphasize seamless flow of information between devices and services. Okay, that's what networking is about. But networking is its own entire discipline of information technology. Okay, networking can get very complex, right? I'm not asking you to become an expert in networking. I'm asking you to understand and have a solid grasp of networking, okay? Understand how it works, because then you'll be able to protect it. Now, should you deep dive into networking? Yes, 100%. I'm deep diving into networking. Every day I learn more and more about networking, because networking is again, if there's no networking, none of us have any jobs, okay? The reason we exist is because data is moving, okay? Data lives, and then it moves into another place. Okay, so we have different types of networks. All right, we have what's called LANs, or local area networks. Network in your home is considered a LAN. It's a local network of systems. Okay, you have 5 family computers, you have your laptops, you have your mobile, each person in the family has an iPhone, you have 5 smart TVs, everyone's watching Netflix on there, right? All of those systems inside your house can communicate with each other. They are considered to be in a local area network. Okay, we can think about this in geographical terms too, in physical terms. These are systems that reside close to each other and talk to each other. But then, what if companies have one office in the United States and one office in China? Okay, and the company needs to send data between each other, right? From the United States office to the China office. If those systems are communicating with each other, this is now considered a wide area network. The internet is considered a wide area network. These are networks that span large distances. So it's important from a cybersecurity perspective to make sure we're protecting data in both of these different types of networks. Okay. If data is traversing devices inside of your home, are they safe? Do you automatically trust all the network traffic happening inside of your home? Yes, there's a degree that that is safer. Is it 100% safe? No, nothing is 100% safe. So you need to understand how devices communicate with each other inside of your home and then implement some protections there. Okay. Inside of an office building. Yes, you work at a company. Yes, devices inside of the company are talking to each other. You want to make sure that there are protections there. Now you need to send traffic over the internet. You need to make sure that that data is protected. And then there's an entire different set of equipment that enable networking. Okay. You need to understand what are switches. Okay. When we say switches, these are physical hardware that connect multiple systems together. Okay. If you have 5 computers, let's say you have 5 desks sitting next to each other, and you look at the internet cable connected to all 5 of these computers at each 5 desks, you could trace all of those cables going into one piece of networking equipment called a switch. And that switch allows these computers to talk to each other or allows them to talk to other systems. Okay. We have routers. Routers enable us to send traffic between different networks. We have firewalls. Okay. Every cybersecurity professional needs to understand how firewalls work. Firewalls allow us to control traffic. Okay. If we don't want system A talking to system B, the firewall is what we are going to use to control that. So you need to dive into firewalls. Okay, they can get very complex as well. So why are we talking about networking when it comes to cybersecurity? What could happen if an attacker gained control of the network that connects all systems? What could happen? What happens if an attacker gained control of your firewalls? If someone hacked into your firewalls, it can quickly become the Wild West because the attacker could change the rules and make it so that before these systems couldn't talk to these other systems, but now they can. And the attacker gets a foothold on that system. And now that attacker changed the rules. Now that attacker can move from one system to even more critical systems. Okay. If you have databases in your infrastructure where those databases are holding very pertinent and sensitive information, usually with firewalls, you are controlling what can talk to those databases. If an attacker hacked into your network and got access to your firewalls, they could say, hey, I got access to this one system. Let me just make it so that this system can talk to all the databases. And now I don't have to hack into the database. Now I can already talk to it. Now let me attack the database and steal all the information. If you got access to switches, you could change VLANs, right? We'll cover that in the next module. If you got access to routers, you can change how systems communicate between networks. Gaining access to the network in the eyes of an attacker, they would have a field day. All right. So in cybersecurity, we need to know how to protect networks. Okay. We need to know how to protect systems talking to other systems. How can they talk to each other? What kind of data can they send to each other? All right. We need to understand the topology of networks. Is it a local area network? Is it a wide area network that we're talking about? We need to know how to protect switches. We need to know how to protect routers. We need to know how to use firewalls, okay, and control traffic. In many organizations, you have cybersecurity teams controlling the firewalls because, yes, they are a networking equipment, but one can easily argue that the firewalls are a heavy and critical tool in the cybersecurity tool belt. And then we have data. Okay, I mentioned it before, but data is at the focal point of everything. This is the whole reason we're doing everything, right? We're protecting systems because these systems hold data. All right, data is considered the most valued asset. If you are at a hospital, your medical records are data. Okay, the whole reason you're at a hospital is to get treated. And the doctors treat you by leveraging the data that they have on you. They have your medical history. They charted what you're experiencing, your symptoms, the medicine that you're taking, right? That data is critical. It drives decisions. Companies protect their data because it gives them their competitive edge. Okay, you have defense contractors working on different types of technology. They don't want that data getting out. You have federal agencies that are doing whatever they're doing. They don't want that data getting out, right? So data needs to be protected. Your data needs to be protected. Now, is all data the same? No, 100% not. And you need to understand that. In cybersecurity, we are able to classify data. We were able to put data in different categories. Financial records, okay? Your bank information. How much money you have in the bank. What bank institute you work with. How many accounts you have. That falls under the category of financial information. You need to protect financial data differently than you would protect your name or your address. Personal identifiable information. Your social security number. You want to protect that, right? You don't want everybody having your social security number. Private health information, right? We talked about it. Do you want everyone knowing your personal life? If you have a disease, if you're battling something, do you want everyone knowing that? No, because if that gets in the hands of an attacker or gets in the hands of the wrong person, they could use that against you. They could blackmail you. We don't want that happening. So we need to protect that data. And the thing is, sometimes that's out of your control as well. If you go visit a doctor's office, you are there for their services. They have your data. They need to be protecting that data. Intellectual property. If you're at a company and your company is working on the next groundbreaking invention, you need to be protecting that, right? Your company wants to be the ones to come out with that new product or that revolutionary technology. You don't want someone stealing that, right? Or what if that intellectual technology, people don't like it? What if someone comes and tries to destroy it? And now they've made it so that the world couldn't benefit from whatever that innovation was going to be, right? Again, this is data that needs to be protected. And we talk about different categories of data because in cybersecurity, we protect these types of data differently. If you have a spreadsheet that talks about all the places you visited in the past year, are you going to protect that spreadsheet the same way you protect the next spreadsheet that has the entire payroll for your company, all the vendors you work with, all the money that was sent out, bank account information? No, 100% not. That's why we have to understand that data is treated differently. Data is at the foundation of everything. Applications and systems are built to literally store data and process it. The data is what we use on a daily basis, but we need ways to interact with that data, right? So that's why systems exist. We need to be able to send data back and forth to each other. So systems are the backbone of doing stuff with this data. So the reason I talk about all this is, what is the central goal of cybersecurity? It is protecting data integrity. Okay, is the data trustworthy? Has it been modified maliciously? Can you trust that data? Confidentiality. You want to make sure that the only people who are authorized to view the data or use that data are the ones accessing and using that data. Is the data available? If you are a patient at the hospital and you are facing a life-threatening emergency and the doctor runs up and says, I'm going to pull up all the information and I'm going to save you. What happens if that data is unavailable at that moment in time where they need it the most? So that's why we're talking about all this. Okay? That's why we're talking about systems, networks, and data, because our goal in cybersecurity is to protect that data, to protect the systems, to protect the networks. So you need to be able to understand this. Why might attackers care more about stealing data than shutting systems down? As we learn more about data integrity, confidentiality, and availability, this is going to be an important question you need to be able to answer and think about. All right. Why might an attacker care more about stealing the data than shutting systems down? One of the reasons is they can steal your data and keep coming back to steal more data, right? If they shut you down, then their target no longer exists. If they want to continuously exploit you, if they just steal your data but they don't shut you down, they could have gotten away covertly. All right. If they shut your systems down, then the attacker has exposed themselves. You now know that there's an attacker because they shut down all your stuff. But what happens if they're silently stealing data from you? You are just constantly a gold mine of valuable information. They could be letting you do all the work and then take all your findings. There could be a numerous amount of reasons why attackers want to steal data rather than just disrupting all your operations. We need to be accounting for that, right? They want to steal your data and then sell it. But if they shut you down, there's no more data to steal and no more data to sell. If you're an attacker and you want to sell people's private health information, you can't just shut the hospital down because then no more information is being generated. So at this point, we've talked about it a lot, but we've talked about information technology, but how are organizations actually depending on this technology? Obviously, operations. In order for a business to operate, they need to continuously leverage their technology. All right. Their systems need to be able to talk to each other. They need to be able to do stuff with the data that they're producing or using, their daily workflows. Okay. You work at a company and the daily operations are leveraging technology. The emails, the timekeeping, the customer relations management software, the custom software that you developed inside the organization. You need to be able to use all that. You need to be able to do your work efficiently, right? You don't want to be passing snail mail amongst each other. You want to be able to email each other. You want to be able to use Microsoft Teams or Slack to communicate with each other. What happens if that stuff goes down? What if someone steals all your Slack messages or all your Teams messages? If you are a company that provides services to customers, you want to be able to ensure that you are continuously operating, right? What if you are a utility company and you provide electricity to 100,000 people? What happens if you go down? If the IT systems that you use to ensure that people have electricity, if that IT goes down, people lose power, and that can quickly become life-threatening as well. If you have 100,000 employees, you need to be able to ensure that everyone gets paid. So your payment systems need to operate. Nothing operates in a silo. Okay, I need you to understand that nothing happens independently. We are all connected. No one company out there produces everything they need to operate. Okay, this is where the concept of supply chain comes in. If you are a hospital, you need to be able to buy the medical equipment from somewhere. You are buying medical software from somebody. Okay, if you are a manufacturer and you're building something, you are not producing the raw materials. You could be providing the raw materials to somebody, or you are a manufacturer that orders raw materials from somebody and then manufactures your product. Okay, so the entire web of the supply chain needs to continuously operate, or that could cause disruptions to the entire globe. Right? What happens when an oil pipeline goes down and people can no longer get their oil, right? People can no longer get gas. We see this in real world all the time. If things go down, bad stuff happens. And believe it or not, part of cybersecurity is ensuring that things do not go down. Okay, it's not just about fighting bad guys. We also want to make sure that technology does not fail. Technological failures halt operations, can cause significant financial loss, damage to reputation, and disruption of critical business functions. As we dive deeper into this course, you are going to understand that cybersecurity plays a real role in financial well-being as well. The financial well-being of a company. Our job as cybersecurity professionals is to also worry about the money. Now, we're not accountants. When I say worry about money, it's our job to make sure that the company continues operating so that you can make money. It's our job to make sure that companies continue operating to generate revenue so everyone keeps their job because everyone has to get paid. We want to make sure that the company doesn't face a reputational damage scenario, okay? If you are a power company and you provide power to 100,000 people in your region, what happens if your operations fail every single day and people lose power every single day? That is going to quickly become a very real problem. People are going to lose faith in your company and people are going to want to switch utility providers. Okay, that is damage to reputation. It's our job as cybersecurity professionals to make sure that doesn't happen. What would happen to a company if its systems suddenly stopped working for an entire day? If systems suddenly stopped working for an entire day, a plethora of problems would ensue. Okay, we saw it with airlines. If an airline company's systems go down, they're going to ground all flights. And now you have millions of people stuck in their places. They can't get to their families. They can't get to these conferences. Logistics stop, right? Because airline companies also operate logistics. Okay, what if FedEx couldn't send packages, right? They couldn't send their airplanes full of packages. All right, UPS couldn't do that. If their operations halted for an entire day, we would immediately see that ripple in the real world. So it is the job of cybersecurity professionals to make sure that does not happen. So we've already covered this, but that's why cybersecurity exists. There's real risk. Okay, systems are complex. It's our job to make sure that these systems don't get attacked, they don't get taken down, they're not misused, that the systems aren't used for malicious activity. We want to make sure that systems are configured correctly, right? When someone sets up a system, there's a ton of settings to be inputted and changed. We want to make sure that those settings are done right. It's our job to also make sure that happens, because that could have a ripple effect if done incorrectly. We want to make sure that systems don't have weaknesses. The IT landscape is complex. There is a ton of weaknesses out there. It's our job to manage those weaknesses. We need to be able to understand who would attack who. We need to get in the mind of attackers. Okay, every organization faces some kind of threat. All right, you can be a mom and pop shop. Someone might want your data. They want to maybe extort you. If you're the most popular coffee place in town, maybe an attacker knows that and they want to attack your network and steal all your data and say, hey, if you don't pay me $1 million, I'm going to destroy everything and you're going to have to close up shop. Right? You could be a local doctor's office. Someone can steal all the patient information and start blackmailing everybody. You could be a power company and someone wants to cause damage and take out the power grid. Cybersecurity exists to make sure that we are implementing security controls, and we're gonna get to what that means. What do we mean by security controls? What's the purpose of that, right? It's the actual solutions we're putting into place to protect systems, the networks, protect the data. Our job as cybersecurity is to protect systems, to protect networks and protect data from, this is where it all boils down, unauthorized access, unauthorized alteration, right? Unauthorized changes to the systems, the networks, of the data, and the destruction, unauthorized destruction, because sometimes we decommission things, we intentionally destroy data, right? This is all about unauthorized, right? We don't want attackers doing this. We don't want people accidentally doing this kind of stuff. That's our job as cybersecurity professionals. If organizations depend so heavily on technology, what risks do they face when security is weak? They face all of this. They face systems failing and operations halting. They risk people attacking and hacking systems and stealing data. Okay, they risk financial loss. They risk not being able to perform anymore. They have to close up shop. People could be at risk, right? We could see very real and tangible threats to human life. That's why cybersecurity is extremely important. Now, to end our module, we talked about systems, we talked about networks, we talked about data, why I'm introducing that for you. But what happens in the real world when this stuff fails, right? What happens when cybersecurity did its best, but an attacker still got through? The Equifax hack. I'm sure you and I are knowledgeable on Equifax. We've heard of Equifax, major credit reporting, okay? When we check our credit score, Equifax is one of the major ones reporting our credit data. They have financial data for millions of people, all right? Practically everybody. They got attacked. They were breached. They had a web application that had a weakness that an attacker was able to take advantage of and steal information of approximately 147 million individuals. Not only is that a very real problem for you and I as consumers, It's a problem for Equifax. Their reputation was damaged. People no longer trusted Equifax. They said, why did you get hacked? Did you not know that your web application had a weakness like that? Why was somebody able to breach you? For such a massive company that deals in the financial world, there are very real consequences to not having appropriate cybersecurity protections. Now, what we don't want to do is sit here and blame cybersecurity professionals. We don't know the true story. Was it negligence? Or was it they did their best, but the attacker got the best of them? We don't know that. Cybersecurity professionals need to understand how to implement security protections, and we do our best to make sure that the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data is preserved. But sometimes, no matter what you do, attackers get the best of you. Cybersecurity is a continuous job. One little crack in the foundation can lead to breaches or hacks, destruction of data, unauthorized access of data. This is a 24/7 job for cybersecurity professionals. We do our best. You will do your best. What simple security failure might allow a vulnerability like this to remain unpatched? Now, this is kind of a curveball because we haven't really talked about this, but again, the whole idea is to get your mind thinking about this stuff. A simple security failure is recognizing that there's a weakness in the web application, but then not doing anything about it. And this happens in the real world. And we'll talk about that when we talk about patch management. Sometimes the vulnerabilities, the weaknesses get overlooked. Sometimes they fall through the cracks. Sometimes there's too much going on and the IT staff is unable to get to remediating those vulnerabilities. This one really hits home because I saw it. Maybe you saw it. But the Colonial Pipeline. Critical infrastructure, okay? Pipelines fall into the category of critical infrastructure. This is stuff that we absolutely must ensure does not get attacked, breached, or taken down. Power utility companies fall into the critical infrastructure. Hospitals fall under critical infrastructure. Communications fall under critical infrastructure. The pipeline was attacked by ransomware. We'll touch on ransomware, but essentially their data was held for ransom. They said, pay us or you're not going to get your data back. And the Colonial Pipeline, the company that ran it, had to shut down. And we saw people running to the gas stations thinking that gas was no longer going to be available and that everyone was going to run out of gas. This could have had a very real impact on the lives of people if we ran out of gas. Thankfully, they were able to react and come back online before anything terrible happened. But this was widespread fuel shortages, significant disruption. The entire East Coast went into a frenzy because this happened. They had to pay $4.4 million in Bitcoin. They got some of it back, but majority was still lost. From a financial aspect, the attackers gained money. But this is what I mean. This is not a joke. Cybersecurity is not a joke. Because when this stuff happens, real people get affected. Can you imagine if there was a continuous shortage of gas? Maybe people couldn't fill their cars up with gas and no one would be able to get around. Public transit infrastructure would get overwhelmed. People would no longer be able to get to their jobs. I mean, you can think about the entire chain of events that would happen if something like this continued and they were not able to recover. So we're at the end of module 1. This is, again, you and I are building the foundation of why cybersecurity exists, what it means to be a cybersecurity professional, and we're building by first understanding the foundation of everything, IT. Okay, we learned about information technology, which is all the systems and the networks and the data. Okay, everything that enables our daily life is information technology. If you work with any of this, you are in information technology. We learned that organizations absolutely depend on all of this functioning. The reason why cybersecurity is so prevalent and so important is because we cannot risk systems going down. We cannot risk data getting stolen. It has real life impact. security breaches can result in financial loss for the company that you work for. Or if a hospital goes down, it could result in threat to human life. If the power grid goes down, that is terrible worst case scenario. We've had real world attacks on water supply. Okay, can you imagine if our water supply was compromised? There are attackers out there that want to see that happen. So when looking at any organization, what should a security professional try to identify first? This is why we went over it. This question right here. You need to understand what's actually there. You need to understand it. You need to know what systems are there. You need to have a lay of the land. Understand how the network is functioning. What is your network layout? What's the topology of your network? What kind of data are you processing? Are you working at a hospital? That means you're protecting health information. Are you working at a finance institution? That means you're protecting financial information. You're working at a bank. If you're working for a critical infrastructure, you work at the local power company, right? What kind of data are you actually protecting? So that is our takeaway for module 1. If you stuck with me through this, then you're on the right path. We are molding each other, okay? I am here to guide you, and I am changing the way you think about IT and cybersecurity. So I hope you enjoyed this module. I hope I have piqued your interest, and I hope you continue down this path, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much to cover in the world of cybersecurity. We're not going to even cover everything in this course, but I'm going to jumpstart your journey into IT and cybersecurity. So I will see you in the next module.